Are you prepared to transform your well being? I'm Sanjay Raja. My mission is to challenge our perspectives on food, fitness, and overall health. I own a successful nutrition and fitness business based in Orlando, Florida. And through this experience, I've learned that there's no one size fits all solution. From creating delicious and healthy recipes to training elite athletes and even writing the book, The Food Talk. I've accumulated a wealth of knowledge, but here's the exciting part. There's always more to discover. That's why I'm embarking on a journey to connect with leading experts, unveiling the secrets to a happier, healthier life. Together, let's explore innovative ways to enhance our well-being. This is Recipe for Wellness. Hey everyone, this is Sanjay Raja with Recipe for Wellness. So I'm excited today as season one's about to come out. We're all really excited for the launch. And one of our guests, Dr. Nadia Santana, decided to join us today. And it was interesting meeting with Dr. Santana because she is my favorite vegan in the world. I'm not a vegan guy, but she introduced me to so many vegan recipes. We went to a restaurant called Red Bamboo. And just as a little sidebar for the audience, because I don't want to give away too much, the episode that we did with her was so much fun. We had a great time. She was kind enough to allow me to cook in her kitchen. And I didn't burn down the place, thankfully. But the cheese still didn't melt right. But you have to watch the episode to really understand that joke. But that's all good. So I want to welcome Dr. Nadia Santana. How are you doing? It's been so long since we saw you. How have you been?
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Sanjay. You say I'm your favorite vegan in the world, but am I the only vegan you know? Let's be real.
No, that's a good point. I know a lot of vegans now because of the show, but I think you're the most entertaining vegan I've ever met in my life. So that's always a good thing, right? You know, that's always a good thing. It was interesting. We did our episode in New York City, your hometown. I love New York, and you showed us a different side of New York City, like the the vegan restaurant that you took us to. I didn't even know it even existed, honestly, and I've been up and down New York. So some of the hidden gems, which was fantastic. But for those of in our audience who don't know Dr. Santana, I want to give her the floor here and just kind of talk about who she is, what she does, and what is this vegan lifestyle you're trying to educate the public on.
So my name is Dr. Nadia Santana. I'm a family nurse practitioner based out of New York City, as Sanjay said. I don't think we saw any subway rats though, Sanjay. So next time you come in, we're gonna have to check out the subway rats. Um,
Yeah.
so my background is I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. I served 2 years in Cameroon, Central Africa, and that's where I got into the health and wellness world. I thought I was going to go
Mm.
to law school, and then I didn't do so well on the LSAT and realized that medicine and nursing was my calling and switched tracks quickly. I would have been a
Ah.
terrible lawyer. I like to joke that I'm glad I didn't fail out of law school. That would have been a lot more expensive than nursing school. And over in Africa, I decided to become vegetarian for my health reasons. I'd be walking around in the open air markets. There'd be cow carcasses hanging above, and lots of flies swarming. And I really, really didn't want to keep consuming meat. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to give up meat for my health.
Yeah.
And so after that, after my Peace Corps service, I returned back to the U.S., decided to go to nursing school and the nurse practitioner school, and eventually received my doctorate and my nursing degrees from Columbia. And during this time, I began my transition towards veganism. I wasn't aware of the animal rights or cruelty issues within the dairy and the egg industry, or the environmental benefits as well. And I actually learned about this from a physician I worked with. And so I began the slow transition from a vegetarian into a vegan. And I call myself imperfectly vegan. I want to make that clear. You know, I'm not perfect in my veganism by any means, but I strive to keep this intention with me on a daily basis, because for me,
Mhm.
I'm vegan for the animals, but there's so many benefits. And so when I talk to people, I never want to shove this lifestyle down their throat. I'm very open about my veganism and my struggles, but you know, with my patients, I talk about the health benefits. There are numerous studies that show just how a plant-based diet can help prevent, if not treat, chronic diseases. And so we see a lot of people in this country suffering from multiple comorbidities, and I'd love to help people feel better so they can live happier and healthier lives.
So I walked into that episode and totally unaware of what a vegan lifestyle is, honestly. And I think our goal for that episode was to shed a light on it because I had some bad experiences with vegans, honestly. I remember being in California to do some auditions, and I would stop off at a restaurant before or after my audition. And I went to this restaurant that was right by the casting office, and I said, it looks cool. It's but they advertise as vegan, and I said I've never tried it, and this was like in 2017. And I went in there and I felt like I ate grass all day. That's what I felt like I ate. And then they charged me $60 on top of that to eat grass, which was fantastic, right? And I was asking the waiter, I was like, hey, I've never had tried vegan food. Can you recommend some things? And he said, everything's good. I said, okay, well, if everything's good, let me just try a little bit of this and that. And it just really wasn't a great experience, just to be honest. Wasn't a great experience. So then I met other vegans down the road that who were very, for lack of a better term, militant vegans, because if you didn't follow their lifestyle, they got very angry with you, right? They said, oh, you eat meat, you do this, you do that. How could you do that? Animal kill. I mean, very adamant. Now, I'm all about being passionate about what you believe in, but I'm also a big believer in the quote which says, "Be curious, not judgmental." Right? So I think that episode that we did was so eye-opening for me because there was a question. I actually just did the edits on our episode, which was episode 3, and we've sent it off to the network and they're going to air it. And there was a question that popped up between you and I, and that is, what does it mean to be vegan? What does that mean? We've heard, okay, you don't eat meat, understood. You respect animals, that's great. But what does it truly mean to be vegan? Because I don't think I understood that, but I watched the episode again and I got it. Why don't you tell our audience what's your interpretation of what it means to be vegan?
So first of all, I'm so sorry about your experiences with veganism in the past. You're not the first person to say that, and that's why my whole goal with veganism and a plant-based lifestyle is to really make this more accessible to other people, because when in the history of the world does shaming actually change anything? I like to
Hmm.
say that as a vegan, I have compassion for the animals and the environment, but if I don't extend that compassion to my fellow human beings, there's a disconnect there. And so
Yeah.
that's my message. Um, so what does it mean to be vegan? Well, first of all, I'm so glad that there was some clarity after the episode, because that would have been real bad if we had gone through that whole day and you still had questions about this. So I'm happy that you get it. But for our listeners, a vegan lifestyle, let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about plant-based versus veganism, because there's also some confusion there. So
Yeah.
plant-based is a what we refer to of a diet that is mainly based on plants and devoid of animal products, right? So
Hmm.
meat, milk, eggs. So those three things, but it's not a lifestyle. So it's a diet, right? So plant-based people are consuming more whole foods. That many people actually do it more for their health reasons, and this is what we
Hmm.
refer to in a lot of our studies. We don't really use the term veganism. We often talk about plant-based, right? Now, veganism takes it a step further, and veganism is a lifestyle which not only is devoid of animal products, but is also, we don't wear clothing made from animals. For example, we don't wear leather, or we don't wear suede
Mm.
or fur or silk. So when I recently hiked the Camino de Santiago, which we probably talk about in a bit, I was really judicious about looking through the different clothing and stuff that I had to bring, because I had to make sure that there wasn't any down or silk in them to
Hmm.
find my gear for hiking. And I did that successfully. I was able to hike the entire Camino without any animal products in my clothing.
So can I stop you right there? Because real quick question for you, and that is silk. Because silk is not an animal product because we're not killing like the silkworms or anything like that. So that's not allowed?
So we actually are killing the silkworms. And I learned about this on my journey on the Camino, because people had recommended silk sleeping bag liners. And I said, well, silk is
Okay.
an insect, right? So what's wrong with it? Aren't we just getting the silk from the silkworm? But actually the silkworms are boiled alive to like get the silk out of them. So it's
Oh,
actually
wow.
a very inhumane practice. So that's a
Okay,
great
got it.
question. And those are those nuances that I think if more people really understood what goes into creating their clothing or their food, they might question how they've been living, just because those are things we just don't talk about. Like the silk factory is not going to be like, hey, we boil a bunch of silkworms to create your silk clothing,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So then let's talk about this then, because I can get off in so many tangents. But uh, wool, right? Shearing sheep, all that, is that considered animal cruelty?
So I can't say it's considered animal cruelty in terms of I have not witnessed that myself, but from the forums and things that I've read and watched, oftentimes the shearing of the sheep can cause bleeding and mistreatment of these
Hmm.
animals. So I'm not going to go
Okay.
across the board and say this is animal cruelty. That's not my style. A vegan,
Hmm.
would definitely, agree that to not wear that type of article of clothing. But what I've seen and read, it doesn't seem the most humane way to shear the sheep.
Okay. All right. Sorry, sidebar. I just had to get that out because I needed some clarification on that. But continue, please.
What was the question again? What am I continuing about?
So what was the vegan lifestyle? What is that vegan lifestyle?
Okay, sure, sure. So aside from the food and the clothing, we also don't participate in things like zoos or rodeos or riding of animals typically. You know, I I have an upcoming trip to Egypt, and
Hmm.
historically I had ridden a camel, and this time I'm just not going to ride a camel. I don't personally think a camel would appreciate me being on its back. But I've also experienced things that I thought of was cruel when I went to a rodeo. That was really hard for me to witness. And so again, I'm not coming from a place of judgment about what is going on in the world. I'm just coming from a place of my own experience and awareness for
Hmm.
others to kind of just check in with themselves about these activities.
So I think these are some interesting points because you think about, like, for example, horseback riding. Is that cruel?
So I remember I was in the Dominican Republic a few years ago, and this was before I was vegan, and we took a trip up into the mountains, and I was sitting. It was a horseback riding trip, my mom and I, and the horse that I was on, the horse was just like struggling to go over these stones in the river and like make its way up the mountain, and I felt really bad for the horse at the time, and this was before I
Hmm.
was vegan. I just felt like me, this being this added weight, this horse seems to be struggling. I don't know if the saddle is hurting this horse. I just, for me, I just didn't feel comfortable riding the horse. I
Hmm.
also see here in New York City the horses pulling the carriages, and these horses are
Yeah.
these really heavy carriages. Horses have been hit by cars. So I just think that if we look at it from the horse's point of view, does a horse like to be ridden? We don't know. We can't ask the horse. But if you look at
Hmm.
what surrounds that, would we do that to a dog? Would if there was a big dog that could like haul like a cart and put like a heavy child on that, would we find that acceptable? I don't think we would find that acceptable. And so why do we do this for some animals but not for others?
So that's an interesting point because you think about the animals that we identify with, right? And not to make fun of it, but it's kind of a running joke, and that is certain restaurants are serving dog or cat, right? It's people make fun of that sometimes. But like near and dear to us, like dogs, cats, we would never think about eating them, right? We never think about that. And then now what we're seeing is, like, for example, like cows are like big dogs. They're like big dogs, right? You play music to them, they play with you. I mean, they're just very sentient, intelligent animals that essentially, just want to exist, just like we all do. And I get that, and now, but they're so prized for red meat, right? It's such a big industry, and whether whatever side of the fence you're on, it's neither here nor there. But I think it's interesting how we value one animal's life versus another. and how we made those judgment calls, right? How did we decide to go down that path, right?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah, I've always asked that question, and I just never understood it. And have I eaten red meat? Absolutely, I have. I've done it. Have I enjoyed it? Yes, I actually enjoy it. It tastes good to me. Do I? Can I speak to the subject on that without any guilt? No, because I'm on the other side of it. I've eaten it. I've been vegetarian. I've been a meat eater. I do both now, So it's a hard subject to really answer, honestly, for me. But you being kind of very adamant in your beliefs and following that lifestyle, I'm sure you have a lot of friends that eat meat, right? So do you ever get into discussions that are uncomfortable, that have led to kind of an open forum? And what are your thoughts about that?
So thanks for sharing that about your personal feelings about eating meat versus not eating meat and the guilt that you sometimes feel. I think guilt is really a terrible feeling. And I think it points back to the fact that our food choices are very personal. And so when we start to
Hmm.
question our food choices, it's almost like we're feeling attacked because if you're questioning your food choices, like, why am I eating red meat? Like, does this go in alignment? Do I believe in animal cruelty? No. Most people will say that they don't believe in animal cruelty, and if they eat
Right.
meat, then they have to question their beliefs, and that's hard. That's a hard question, and so I applaud you for kind of looking at it from both sides of the spectrum. In terms of my friends, I'm the only vegan friend of mine. I do have some vegetarian friends, and
Yeah.
I never push my beliefs on anyone because if I did, I wouldn't have any friends, right? I would not have
Yeah.
any friends. I do speak up when I do feel that something is cruel, that I'm not in alignment with, and I just share tips because I'm a nurse practitioner. If one of my friends is suffering from a health issue, I will share some tips and tricks about, plant-based for that certain condition. But I
Hmm.
certainly want to be the friend. And I've been told that I'm a cool vegan in terms of that because I am non-judgmental about that. And I do we're all at different stages in our journey, right? So if someone is eventually going to go vegan or plant-based in the future, I want to be that resource that they say, "Hey, Nadia, I'm ready. What can I do?" And I want to welcome them with open arms, right? And so
Hmm.
I meet my friends and whoever where they are, and when they're ready, if they're ready, they're always welcome to come to me. But in terms of my own beliefs, that's not going to change anyone. I can highlight the
Hmm.
issues and my why I do this, but I don't want anyone to ever feel shamed or judged by me because that's just not how I operate.
So what was interesting about our episode we did together was I had no clue what it means to be truly vegan. And then you and I sat down, started talking about it, and I said, a lot of the recipes I make are can technically be classified as vegan, right? And they taste good. I make them quite often, right? And it just was this veganism was this esoteric thing for me, which is like you got to do this, this, and this, and then you're vegan. And then it just kind of put me off to it, right? And I think a lot of people are like that. But when I realized, like we made, without giving too much away on the episode, we made eggplant parmesan, and you said, "Got to be vegan." I said, "Okay, it's a challenge. I'll make that happen." And so we went to the store before we came to your place, and it was actually shopping was quite easy. I was actually pretty surprised. We got eggplant, we got almond flour, we've got a plant-based egg wash, and then we got some, I think, either pea protein milk or almond milk, I think, as the egg wash, and then some spices, and then of course the infamous vegan cheese, right? But it was actually very simple. So that to me was really surprising. And do I integrate that still with the kids tonight? Absolutely, I still do it. They like it, and they don't they don't ask questions. They say it just tastes good. At the end of the day, you can classify yourself as whatever you want to be. And being nutrition and fitness for most of my career, I've heard every diet out there. It's crazy. I've heard every single one out there. There's some that I can't even understand, like eggetarian. I'm like, what is that? So, there's new classifications coming out all the time. But I make it. It tastes good, and I think that's how we kind of change people's thoughts on it. And that is, at the end of the day, food is meant to be enjoyed. It's one of the simple pleasures in life. And if we can make it taste good, I think people are more apt to try it and eat it and implement that lifestyle. And they're not thinking about, oh, this is so healthy. They're just thinking it tastes good, but hey, it is healthy. So, how do we make veganism popular in the sense of we're not trying to convert anybody, we're just giving them options, right? So, how do we do that?
That's a great question, Sanjay. And I think I proved that it's possible in various parts of the world when I hiked the Camino de Santiago this summer. So for the show that I'm creating, it's a plant-based food and lifestyle show. Have you noticed I use the term
Hmm.
plant-based and not vegan? I did that for a few
Yeah.
reasons because I want to welcome people because vegans, as you had said, can be militant, right? And so I know quite a few vegans that have dropped. Most vegans that I know are former vegans, right? Not because
Ah.
we don't have as an inclusive of a community. And so I hiked 500 miles from France to Spain and filmed it to show that plant-based lifestyle can be done. So I did this on the Camino de Santiago. Was it challenging at times? Definitely. But I'll tell you what, I ate way better than a lot of the people that weren't
Mm.
plant-based because everywhere I
Yeah.
went, I had tips and tricks to do it. And a lot of people on the Camino actually had dropped their veganism or vegetarianism because they thought it was going to be too challenging. I met a gal that practiced being a vegan, practiced integrating animal-based proteins into her diet for a full year before the Camino because she had read that it was not possible to do. And I said, I'm doing it daily. And so
Mm.
I think it's in terms of like integrating it, making it easier. First of all, you just got to know that these products are out there and available. Anywhere you go, you can ask for plant-based options, and they're going to have them generally. Anywhere I've been, there's always been at least one option. But on the Camino de Santiago, in the middle of nowhere, Spain, I was eating these amazing soups and salads and lentils and beans. It was great food. And so
Hmm.
to your point of when you went in this store in New York City, it was a lot easier than you thought. Well, you also knew what to look for. You know what I mean? You knew that you needed a plant-based cheese. Sometimes people don't even have that thought in their head. They're like, I need to get cheese, but they don't realize that there is a cheese alternative, right? And so I think it's
Hmm.
first bringing the awareness to people, showing that these products are available. There are a lot more vegan recipes than we actually know about, right? Like you said, you're cooking at home, and a lot of the things you cook are vegan. And then, reducing the shame and the guilt around it. It's like if we can get people to eat more plants and less animal proteins, our our planet's going to be much better off, and they're going to be healthier. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I always tell people, my through my nutrition company, is that a plant-based diet is very anti-inflammatory. Uh, and a meat-based diet is very inflammatory in a lot of ways. So I try to mix 50-50. So it's interesting in our, with the kids and I, we don't eat meat for breakfast, typically not even lunch, and maybe dinner. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. I've really reduced my meat intake because being a former athlete, it was required having to do it to get that protein in, to get all the amino acids in there. And then I became a bodybuilder for about 2 to 3 years after that, and that was just crazy what I had to eat back then. But now it's just about feeling healthy, maintaining a certain weight. I'm not training for anything; just want to stay healthy and active and be able to be active with my kids and keep up with them. So I think that, if we reframe it, which is what's the purpose of your particular diet that you're trying to follow? Most of us are not training to be athletes. We're not. Most of us are just trying to get through the day the best possible way. And then we have families. We want to have enough energy to raise our kids and enjoy that. So I always tell people, think about the end goal. What are you trying to do? And if you could start implementing a plant-based, protein lifestyle, then yeah, I think you should integrate it because you should try everything and discard nothing. Just discard the stuff that doesn't work for you, but try everything. So my question to you then is, what has been the single most common pushback you get when you meet people? Like, what is the most, I get all these common questions all the time. What is the single most common pushback when you say plant-based lifestyle? And where do you get pushback on that?
Well, first, I just want to address your point about being an athlete and a bodybuilder. So, there's a great documentary on Netflix called Game Changers. I'd encourage all of our listeners who are active athletes to check that out because these are all plant-based athletes and they are doing some phenomenal things.
Yeah, I agree with you. Back in the day I
Yeah.
was doing it, it was a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So the number one pushback that I get, It's hard. That's hard to say because I'm not pushing my views on people. So I'm not engaging in these like really like,
So when somebody asks you, they say, somebody asks you, and you kind of share your thoughts. And what is the most common question you get saying, how do I, integrate this in my life? Or it's too hard. There's not enough protein. There's just not enough this and that. So what's the common thing? What's the
I mean,
common
protein is
objection?
definitely a big one. There's a meme that going around on Instagram that's like no vegan has ever died of a protein deficiency, right? Like there's a misconception of protein and the intake you need to have and what there's a ton of protein in veggies. Now, I'm not a dietitian, but I did used to work with
Mhm.
a vegan dietitian and people there's a lot of misconceptions around how much protein we actually need and that we're not getting enough protein, right? Our protein needs change as we age. And so that's a big one, right? As a protein. Another
Uh-huh.
one is, I think financial too. People worry that it's going to be a lot more expensive. And yeah, if you're buying like plant-based or vegan processed foods, of course that like increases the cost 100%. But if you're doing veggies or lentils or beans, things like that, rice, like those things that can be very inexpensive when compared to some other animal-based products, right? I don't know how much eggs are right now because I never buy them, but I've been hearing that eggs are really expensive. And so,
Well, they're not that bad, So I get my eggs from farmers markets. I try to support local businesses, and when you go to farmers market, they're very cheap because they're literally picking it from the chickens, bringing it out to the market. Um, and I'll add kind of onto your point, which is no vegans ever die from a protein deficiency. But we as the general population, we're not protein deficient. This is what I've seen. We are fiber deficient. We have a huge lack in fiber in our diet. There should be no reason, unless certain medical conditions, obviously, where we should take fiber supplements. We should get it from our diet, right? And I think that's what I talk to people about because I get clients who come in and say, hey, create a menu plan for me. We talk about what they're going through, and we create that menu plan. They're like, how come I'm not getting enough protein? I said, you got more than enough protein, by the way. You got more than enough. You're good. You are fiber deficient. And I think what plant-based diet addresses is that fiber issue, which is a big thing. You think about like one of my son's favorite Marvel characters was Black Panther, right? Chadwick Boseman. He died of colorectal cancer, right? And so there's a huge spike in that form of cancer, unfortunately. And I can't go into specifics of how to prevent it, but what I can say is you can do certain things within your power, which is increase your fiber intake for sure. So fiber intake, 100%, I agree with you. Protein, we're not deficient. So you were talking about, rice, legumes, things of that nature. Tell me kind of the hidden gems in the plant-based world that most people don't know about.
well, I love that you mentioned about fiber because I 100% agree with you. And guess what? Like you said, plant-based diet will surely fix that problem. Like I've had patients come to me with constipation. I put them on a plant-based diet. They've come back, they're feeling great, and then they want to start eating meat again, and then they start not feeling well again. So,
Do
there's
you
evidence.
remember Saturday Night Live? Do you remember Saturday Night Live? They did a skit where the guy's like, I'm not feeling good. So his wife recommended a cereal called Colon Blow. Remember that skit?
I don't remember that, but I can imagine that was pretty funny.
Yeah. So it's pretty funny, but no, continue. But what are some hidden gems out there that we're not aware of that we could try out? Because I'm always looking for new recipes myself.
So I love looking. So whenever I look, so I'll just be real that I'm not the best cook. I love to eat, but I'm not the best cook. Like I loved what you made, Sanjay, but if I would have made that, it would not have tasted as good. I mean, I know I helped out, but you did the most of it, right? So it wouldn't have tasted as well if I did. But I do like to try new recipes. So if ever I want to make something, I will type in whatever it is and then vegan. So I love doing that. And the fun thing is if you are a cook and you really like to experiment, a plant-based diet recipes, it's going to be so much fun for you. Like my mom loves to
Mm.
experiment. She's mostly plant-based and she feels a lot better when she is plant-based and whenever I'm visiting her, she'll always like make me a bunch of recipes. And she loves to experiment with just the different types of plant-based milks or flours like you did
Hmm.
and different ingredients. Like it's so much fun. Um, Additionally, like I made a vegan baklava recently. It was
Oh,
fantastic. I was very impressed with myself that I actually did this.
so what made it vegan? Like, so does traditional baklava use flour?
No, it uses a lot of butter, right? And it uses
Butter.
honey,
Oh,
and vegans don't eat honey. So I made it with maple syrup and I use it with a plant-based butter, and it was phenomenal. It was real good. Um,
okay.
so so if anyone wants to try like a healthier version of the recipe, they can just type in the recipe and then just put vegan or plant-based after that. They're going to find a plethora of information. Additionally, for those of our listeners that want a little bit more health information about a plant-based diet for their own, health journey, I love the website nutritionfacts.org. It's run
Hmm.
by a plant-based physician, Dr. Michael Greger, and he just offers some wonderful videos. He picks apart studies. He's very into the science behind the plant-based, and I use him for a resource oftentimes.
So this brings an interesting point, and that is I worked in the medical field for a really long time, with medical devices and surgeries and things of that nature. And what I found interesting was most of the doctors, and we've had these conversations before, never ever talk to their patients about nutrition. They just don't do it, right? And in medical school, you're taught pharmacology. You're not taught nutrition. So I'm always getting a lot of clients from doctors who are like, well, my doctor never talked to me about that. Well, there's certain things that are kind of blocking them from being able to do that, right? And you would know this pretty well, which is you only get so much time with the patient. It's a turn and burn operation, meaning get them in, get them out. So they're seeing volume. So having that nutrition conversation, I'm on the phone with people for like an hour. They cannot do it in 10 to 5 minutes. They can't do it. The other thing is that we've been trained in our society, especially with pharmaceutical commercials, with mass marketing, that if you don't so this is a study, they showed that 85% of patients who left the doctor's office without a script felt like their doctor didn't do a good job. Isn't that crazy?
That is so sad because it's a common issue we have with our patients. It goes back to the old antibiotic argument, right? This goes back to
Hmm.
they didn't give me an antibiotic, they didn't do their job. It's like we have a virus, you don't need an antibiotic. And the thing is, our patients
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
in medicine and nursing to we care about our patients. We want the best for our patients, but the patient also has needs to like mitigate their expectations about,
Hmm.
here's the thing with antibiotics. I'll just use this as an example. That can destroy the gut flora for months after you take an antibiotic.
Absolutely.
So the
Absolutely.
thing is that all medication has side effects, and it doesn't. Some
Yeah.
are benign, some are not. And so if we're prescribing a medication for a patient that doesn't need it, that's not good medicate medicine, practicing medicine.
Hmm.
But our patients
Yeah.
need to realize that most chronic conditions are changed through diet and lifestyle. That's
Hmm.
the first
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
There's
It
definitely a
was
time and a
it was
place for medication. Yeah, go ahead.
it was it no, I'm so sorry. It was interesting because when COVID hit, whatever side of the fence you are with the vaccine or not, it's neither here nor there. But what I found was the best first line defense was personal health, right? We seen we when I was working in the medical field during the COVID time, we saw patients across the board. Get it. Some recovered quickly, some did not. But the common theme we started finding was first line defense is what are you eating? What are your lifestyle habits? What are you doing? Right. So there's definitely a correlation there to some level. And it's interesting because I was talking about patients who want a script. So a lot of physicians, a lot of hospitals, and a lot of, nurse practitioners or physician extenders, they're judged on what are called patient satisfaction scores. Patient walks in, says, I was seen, treated, and I felt like they heard me. And what they found the correlation was if they didn't walk out with a script, their satisfaction score went way down, which is crazy. So how are you able to navigate that? Being a medical professional and you work with medical professionals, how do you navigate that? Because you want to be able to educate them. A couple of questions, which is, do you have time to do it? Number one, and two, are they receptive to
I could go on about this topic for days, Sanjay, but we don't
it?
have time, and I think I'd bore the heck out of everyone with all my thoughts and opinions on this. Um, I think I think I want patients to know that the majority of healthcare providers are doing what's in their best interest. And just because a patient has Googled something or thinks
Hmm.
something else doesn't necessarily mean that that's in the best interest. Of course, the patient knows their body the best in terms of how they're feeling, what has worked for them in the past. I'm never going to say I know for more about you than you know about yourself. Never. That's completely untrue.
Right. Right.
But I will say that if a patient is just wanting to come in for what they want and they're not going to change their mind, there's no way I'm going to change their mind for them, right? We
Hmm.
live in a society, I like to say, an Amazon Prime society, right? We have on demand. Like I live here in New York City. I can get anything delivered to my apartment in like what, 2 hours? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Medications, prescriptions, clothes, food, you name it, I can get it, right? However, if a patient uses that kind of mentality to their health, there's a serious disconnect because you're not going to get healthy overnight typically, right? Of course, with acute
Hmm.
illnesses, that's a little bit different. But if a patient has had a chronic condition, diabetes, hypertension, obesity for years, that's going to take some time to reverse.
Yep.
And so, because we are in this like uber fast, everything I want it now, no patient society, that translates into our healthcare, and that's unfortunate. So, what do we do about it?
So do
I
you?
think, yeah, go ahead.
No, 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 no. I was thinking, like, thinking about that. That is like WebMD, right? So, as you roll your eyes, has it been more helpful or hurtful to medical providers?
I can't speak across the board about the rest of the medical providers, and I don't know how many of my patients actually look on WebMD, but I will tell you, Google has been not the greatest help in terms
Mm,
of patients. Or if a new, I mean, there's all this, contention with pharma advertising on TV, right?
yeah,
That's illegal in some countries. And so if a patient comes
yeah.
to me saying, "I see this medication, I want this medication," that's hard to fight against when pharma is using millions of dollars to
Hmm.
spend to advertise and the patient wants this because of what they've seen on TV. So there's a lot of different factors that come into this. I always want the patient to feel heard. I always want the patient to feel seen, and I want them to know that that I have their best intention. But how they feel and respond to what I say, I have no control over that. And so if we're getting measured on our satisfaction surveys, that's going to cost some providers. They want a high score. That's their income, right? They may
Hmm.
do things that the patient just is demanding because they don't want to lose business. And I think that's so sad. We shouldn't be having Yelp for our medical providers, right?
That's true. That's true.
So of
Yeah.
course, so it's challenging as a healthcare provider. So I think our patients need to manage their expectations, but also they need to do their part. I can only give so much information to my patient, but if they're not going to want to change their lifestyle, so I'd encourage them. That's a little bit of inner digging. Like, do I think that my healthcare provider is going to save me from all these things? If the answer is yes, where is the patient is lacking, they're not empowered. I want to empower my patients,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So that being said, when we had you on our show, you were kind of in this period where you're really trying to get the message out about plant-based lifestyle, about understanding, educating people on what veganism is. And since we've been shot your episode, tell us what you've been doing.
Oh, so much. So I got a few things going on. As I mentioned before, I hiked the Camino de Santiago,
Hmm.
and I shot that. And I my goal is to turn that into a plant-based travel, food, and lifestyle show, and really
Okay.
just show people that this lifestyle can be done across the globe, and that it's a way to make yourself feel better. Sanjay, my whole premise is feel better, do better. I mean, I'm going to digress a little bit from that question, but I want viewers or listeners to like, do you feel good? Like, are you
Hmm.
are you living your best life? Do you feel good in your body? Do you love the way you feel? Are your laboratory numbers good? Are you taking the medication you want to be taking? If the answer is no to those questions, then it's time to start making some lifestyle changes to feel better, right? So that's been my message
Hmm.
across the board. In terms of what I'm doing now, I mean, all the things that I do is in terms of helping people feel better so they can do better, right? I believe that there's a deficit in human innovation just because people don't feel well enough to share their gifts. So I want to
Yeah.
help people feel better, right? Imagine that the next, you know, big cancer breakthrough is by someone who has chronic pain. And because they're not feeling better because they're chronic pain, they can't actually perform the way that they would be if they were out of pain. And so I believe that there's a deficit in humanity just because people don't feel well. So with that digression, the things that I'm doing, the plant-based is mainly about the physical body, right? That's getting your
Right?
physical body feeling. Because honestly, if your physical body doesn't feel well, it really affects all other parts of your life. I also have another business where my business partner and I, who's also a nurse practitioner, we are creating a line of journals and shadow work and mental health
Mm,
resources, because
mm,
there's a lot of science behind that about the positive effects of journaling, about getting to the root cause of what's going on in your life and working through that. I think a lot of us are kind of living these lives where we're not actually going in and doing the work, and it really shows up in various aspects of your life. And so
mm.
it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional, it's all comes together, because you can have the best life in terms of your physical health and in terms of your mental health, but if your spiritual health is off or you're having some type of spiritual crisis, it's going to affect other parts of your life. And so it's really not, you can't just box these things. We're a complete person. There's so much more to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were kind enough to send me some clips about your web-based series that you were doing. Where can people find that?
So my website is nadiasantana.com, and there'll be links to the other businesses, and I'm putting some of my clips right now on YouTube, but goal is that the show actually
Hmm.
makes it to a platform. So
Yeah.
you can check out some of
Yeah.
the things that I'm doing on my website or on Instagram at Dr. Nadia Vibes, Dr. DR.
So outside of that, I remember you having a book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Can you share what the book's about, where people can find the book?
Sure. So the book is tailored towards those who want to be nurse practitioners or new grad nurse
Mm.
practitioners in the nurse practitioner field. And that book can be purchased on Amazon, and there's a link on my website.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Are you working on anything new right now? Like, are you working on any new projects that we should know about?
I mean, there's always something in the mix, right, Sanjay? Um, I've really been focused a lot on this plant-based travel and health and lifestyle show. That's a big one that I've been doing, which has been really exciting. And also, as I mentioned, my other business was just called Vibe Song Studios, where folks can check out some of our resources to help with mental health and resilience. One
Hmm.
of the products that's we're actually selling, which is actually fun, is a digital download. It's called the Let's Celebrate calendar, and I'm really excited
Okay.
about this because life is meant to be celebrated, and
Yeah.
celebration gets people excited. There's some studies behind how celebration is beneficial for us, and it's a digital download that people can integrate into their iCal, Google Calendar, whatever calendar they
Hmm.
have, where it's one day a year of one day, one holiday every year to celebrate. So every day of the
Okay.
year there will be a holiday on your calendar, and you can choose to celebrate. And it's actually fun because there's some family fun ones, family friendly ones, some for women. It's fun. So I love that what I'm doing. And I also want to point out there's another resource for those are kind of on the fence about plant-based or need a little bit more information. On my website, nadiasantana.com, there's a free PDF that they can download with 10 tips to kind of ease into plant-based living. So that might be a good resource for folks to start out with.
So, so that people can really understand the journey, can you kind of summarize three things people can do right now to integrate a plant-based lifestyle into their diet? What would be the top three things you would suggest?
The first one is to know your why. Why are you doing this? The top three reasons are for the animals, for your health, or for the
Hmm.
environment, or for a combination. And if you know your why, it's going to help you maintain this lifestyle. Another suggestion I would make is to go slowly. I think that people are really hard on themselves. Some people do it overnight, and that's
Hmm.
fantastic, right? If they want to change their life. But don't try to make all these changes at once. I like to say add before you take away. Add some fun plant-based foods that you love before you take away some of the foods that you're used to, right? And so kind of slowly
Hmm.
integrating this into your life so you're not overwhelmed. And the third thing is I would recommend finding community. I think finding people that are like-minded that can kind of share, whether that's a vegan group or some plant-based group on the internet. I mean, there's tons of resources out there to find people that will help you along your journey because, I've been doing this for a long time and it can be a lonely journey if you don't find other people that you can talk about it with.
Mm. I think I would add this, and that is I always tell my clients, which is this is a personal journey. So what that means is that you're going to have friends, family, loved ones, people who are going to inadvertently judge you on this journey and say, "Why are you doing this?" Right? It's an interesting thing in that it is the first question I ask anybody who comes to work with me about changing their diet and their lifestyle is I always ask them, "How strong is your relationship at home?" I always ask them that question. And what happens is, "Why are you asking me that?" I say, because what's going to happen is when you're trying to make a change in whatever it is, physical, mental, nutritional, and your partner or your loved one is not on that journey with you, when you're seeing results and doing things to better your health, they will feel like you are inadvertently judging them for not doing the same thing. And I've seen it across the board all the time, right? And it causes a big rift. So I think your point about finding a community that shares this kind of journey is really important, because if you do it with somebody, you're far more likely to succeed than just being on your own and having to go through this by yourself. So I think that's a really important point. So, Dr. Nadia Santana, it's been so much fun as always. And I had a great time on our segment. I can't wait for everybody to see it. So we are getting close to launch. It's going to be coming out nationwide on public television and different PBS platforms. And we're going to have our own streaming channel. Yay. Um, and then I don't want to leak it or share it, but I gave a tip, and that is we are in talks to be on other platforms as well right now, which is great. So we're going to get a wide audience, international audience. Will be fantastic, and I can't wait for the world to see who you are and the amazing work you're doing. Can you share the website one more time with the audience so they can make sure and find you?
Sure. My website is www.nadiasantana.com and my Instagram handle is at Dr. Nadia Vibes.
You're going to be in Egypt, and where else?
Yeah, I'm flying to Scotland today and then I'm headed to Egypt. My father's family's from Egypt, so I'm going there to celebrate my birthday. But I'm also filming it. I've got my tripod, my microphone, everything, my consent forms, everything I did in this Camino. So I would like to get some footage of some plant-based restaurants and things in those two countries as well. So,
Well, for the audience who doesn't know, when we met her, she was living this amazing life and educating the world about plant-based lifestyles. But she picked the brain of our director, who's a great guy, Michael May, and she is now a producer. She's making this great content, and she's doing editing. I mean, it's fantastic what the skills you picked up so quickly. I saw a clip of your journeys when you went on the trail. It was fantastic. You did a great job. So I can't wait to see these clips, and make sure you please share it with everybody. But we're going to put a copy of this episode on our website. We're going to put some of your links on our site, and we want everybody to know who you are, and can't wait to see you on the big screen here very, very soon. So thank you for your time. And we will see everybody again on the next episode of Recipe for Wellness. Thanks, everyone.